My parents demanded I gift my dead grandmother's duplex to their basement-dwelling golden child. Initial post: Am I wrong for not giving my inherited property to my unemployed brother? I never thought I'd be writing one of these posts, but here I am at 2 a.m. after another sleepless night, wondering if I'm the villain in my own family story. My name's Marcus, I'm 27, and I work as a radiologic technologist at a regional medical center. It's a job I fought hard to get. 4 years of specialized education, countless clinical hours, and $68,000 in student loans that still keep me up at night almost as much as this current situation. 6 months ago, my grandmother passed away. She was the only person in my family who truly understood my drive to work in healthcare. While my parents, Carlos, 57M, and Maria, 55F, both work in food service, Dad's a line cook at a chain restaurant, Mom's a server at a different establishment, Grandma Elena saw something different in me. She'd been a nurse's aide back in Puerto Rico before moving to the mainland, and she used to tell me stories about the hospital where she worked, about the difference medical professionals made in people's lives. When the will was read, I discovered she'd left me her duplex in a developing neighborhood about 20 minutes from the hospital where I work. The property wasn't fancy, a modest 2-unit building she'd bought in the 1980s when the area was considered undesirable. She'd lived in one unit and rented out the other, using the income to supplement her Social Security. The lawyer explained she'd specifically wanted me to have it because, in her words written in the will, Marcus understands the value of hard work and the importance of building something for the future. The rental income from the second unit would help me pay down my student loans faster, something Grandma Elena knew weighed heavily on me. Currently, I'm paying $750 a month toward my loans while living in a cramped studio apartment that costs me $1,100 monthly. Between that, my car payment for the used Honda I need to get to work, and basic living expenses, I'm barely keeping my head above water despite making $65,000 a year. Enter my younger brother, Diego, 25M. Diego is what my parents call a free spirit, and what everyone else calls chronically unemployed. He dropped out of community college after 1 semester, claiming traditional education was stifling his creativity. Since then, he's been exploring opportunities while living in our parents' basement. His exploration has included failed attempts at becoming a YouTube gaming streamer, 3 months, 12 subscribers, a cryptocurrency day trader, lost $3,000 of our parents' savings, and most recently, a social media consultant despite having fewer Instagram followers than our local coffee shop. The moment my parents found out about the inheritance, they immediately began campaigning for me to sign the property over to Diego. Their logic: he needs it more than you do. You have a good job, Marcus. You're making good money. Your brother is still finding himself. My mother called me last Tuesday while I was between patients, her voice dripping with a particular brand of guilt only mothers can weaponize. Your grandmother would want the family to share, she said, conveniently forgetting that Grandma Elena specifically chose to leave the property to me alone. Diego could live in one unit and rent the other. It would give him stability to pursue his dreams. When I pointed out that I have $68,000 in student debt while Diego has zero financial obligations living rent-free in their basement, my father's response was swift and cutting. That debt was your choice, Mijo. Nobody forced you to go to that expensive school. You could have gotten a job at the restaurant with me straight out of high school. This has been a recurring theme throughout my life. When I was accepted into the radiologic technology program, my parents questioned why I needed such specialized training. When I graduated with honors, they asked why I couldn't have done something simpler. When I got my job at the hospital, they wondered aloud why I wanted to work such long hours when Diego was smart enough to figure out how to make money without killing himself. The pressure intensified last week when Diego himself showed up at the hospital during my lunch break. He rarely ventures out of the basement, so seeing him in the cafeteria was surprising. He launched into a prepared speech about how the duplex would be his launching pad for his latest venture, a podcast about mindful living in the digital age, despite the fact that he spends 18 hours a day playing video games. You don't understand what it's like, he said, picking at the free cafeteria cookies I'd reluctantly bought him. You've always had it easy. School came naturally to you. You got lucky with that hospital job. Some of us need more help. Lucky. That word echoed in my head during my afternoon shift as I positioned patients for chest x-rays, carefully ensuring proper radiation protection, maintaining sterile fields, and managing the complex digital imaging systems that took me years to master. Lucky, as I dealt with combative emergency room patients, coordinated with physicians on urgent diagnoses, and stayed late to cover for a sick colleague because patient care couldn't wait. My parents have now escalated to calling me daily, sometimes multiple times. They've involved extended family, painting me as the selfish older brother who won't help his struggling sibling. My Aunt Rosa, who hasn't spoken to me in 3 years, suddenly called to tell me I was breaking my mother's heart. My Uncle Fernando, who still owes my parents $5,000 from a failed business venture, lectured me about family loyalty. The breaking point came yesterday. I received a text from my mother with a photo of Diego looking dejected in their basement, surrounded by his gaming setup that cost more than 3 months of my loan payments. The caption read, "Your brother cries himself to sleep knowing his own family won't help him. The duplex is just sitting there empty while he suffers." The duplex isn't sitting empty. I've been spending weekends cleaning it, fixing minor repairs, and preparing to rent both units at market rate. The property manager I consulted estimated I could get $1,400 per unit monthly, which would not only cover my student loan payments but allow me to save for the first time in my adult life. I could maybe even afford to take a vacation, something I haven't done since starting my healthcare career. But here's what really gets me. While my parents are pressuring me to give away my inheritance, they've never once offered to help with my student loans. When I was eating ramen for months during my clinical rotations because I couldn't work full-time while training, they never offered assistance. When my car broke down during my final semester and I had to take out an additional loan to fix it so I could get to my hospital placements, they told me to figure it out. When I graduated and couldn't afford to move out of my dangerous neighborhood immediately because I needed first and last month's rent plus security deposit, they suggested I get a second job instead of offering their spare bedroom. Diego, meanwhile, has been living expense-free for 7 years. They buy his food, pay his cell phone bill, and even gave him money for his various failed ventures. When I calculated it roughly, they've probably spent close to $100,000 supporting his journey of self-discovery, while I've been working night shifts, weekend rotations, and holiday coverage to stay afloat. I feel like I'm going insane. Am I really the selfish one here? I worked so hard to get where I am. I'm still working hard. I see patients who've lost everything to medical bills, and I know that one bad diagnosis could put me in their position, especially with my student debt. The duplex is my safety net, my path to financial stability, maybe my only chance to build something beyond living paycheck to paycheck. But the guilt is eating me alive. My mother won't look at me during family dinners. My father makes passive-aggressive comments about people who forget where they came from. Diego posts vague social media statuses about family betrayal that our relatives like and comment on with prayer hand emojis and hearts. Is it wrong to want to keep what was specifically left to me? Is it selfish to prioritize my own financial stability over my brother's refusal to get a job? Am I the monster they're making me out to be, or am I just tired of being the only one in this family who seems to understand that bills don't pay themselves and dreams without work are just fantasies? I genuinely don't know anymore. Update 1. The nuclear option. It's been 2 weeks since my original post, and I want to thank everyone who commented with support and advice. Your perspectives helped me see through the fog of guilt my family had created. I especially appreciated the healthcare workers who shared their own stories of financial struggle and family pressure. Knowing I wasn't alone in this gave me the strength to do what I'm about to share. After reading through hundreds of comments and doing some serious soul-searching, I made a decision that I knew would change everything. But first, let me tell you what happened in the days following my original post. The pressure from my family had escalated to unbearable levels. My mother started showing up at the hospital during my shifts, sitting in the waiting room and sending me texts about how she couldn't eat or sleep knowing her sons were divided. The charge nurse had to ask her to leave after she tried to follow me into a restricted area. My father began calling my supervisor, claiming there was a family emergency that required my immediate attention, which turned out to be him wanting to lecture me about family values during my work hours. Diego took a different approach. He created a GoFundMe titled, "Help Me Escape Toxic Family Poverty," where he painted himself as a victim of circumstance, conveniently omitting that he lived rent-free and had turned down multiple job offers because they were beneath his potential. He shared this widely on social media, tagging me and implying I was the reason for his struggles. The final straw came when I discovered my parents had contacted a lawyer about potentially contesting the will. Their argument was that my grandmother must have been experiencing cognitive decline when she made her decision, despite the fact that she'd updated her will 2 years before her death when she was completely lucid and had included a comprehensive medical evaluation to prevent exactly this kind of challenge. That's when I decided to explore my options. I contacted a real estate attorney and a property investment firm that had been sending letters about purchasing properties in my grandmother's neighborhood. What I learned changed everything. The area where the duplex stood had been rezoned for mixed-use development. 3 major tech companies had announced plans to open satellite offices within a 2-mile radius. The property value had increased significantly beyond what I'd initially thought. The investment firm offered me $820,000 for the property, far more than the $450,000 tax assessment I'd been working with. I spent 3 sleepless nights thinking about it. With that money, I could pay off my student loans entirely, buy a reasonable condo near the hospital, and still have enough left over for a substantial emergency fund and retirement contributions. It would mean giving up the rental income, but it would also mean immediate financial freedom and, more importantly, nothing left for my family to fight over. I made my decision on a Thursday morning after a particularly difficult night shift where I'd helped diagnose a young mother with late-stage cancer. Life was too short and too unpredictable to spend it fighting with people who only saw me as a resource to exploit. I signed the papers that Friday afternoon. I didn't tell my family until the following Monday, when the sale was already in escrow and irreversible. I sent a group text to my parents and Diego. I've sold Grandma's duplex. The proceeds will go toward my student loans and securing my own housing. This decision is final. The explosion was immediate and spectacular. My mother called me screaming incoherently before switching to tears, claiming I'd killed her soul and destroyed the family. My father left me a voicemail calling me ungrateful, selfish, and no son of his. Diego's response was perhaps the most revealing. He sent me a series of texts calculating what his share would have been worth, despite never having any legal or moral claim to the property. They tried everything to stop the sale. They called the investment company claiming I didn't have the right to sell. They contacted the real estate attorney threatening legal action. They even showed up at the title company's office demanding to be included in the transaction. Each attempt was shut down quickly and professionally. I had complete legal ownership, and the sale was legitimate. My extended family picked sides quickly. Those who had been pressuring me to help Diego suddenly became financial experts, criticizing my decision to sell rather than maintain rental property. My Aunt Rosa posted on Facebook about how some people forget that money isn't everything, from her vacation in Cancun. My Uncle Fernando called me short-sighted, despite having declared bankruptcy twice. But something interesting happened at work. Word had gotten around about my family situation. Hospitals are small communities, and my mother's waiting room vigils hadn't gone unnoticed. My colleagues, particularly the other techs and nurses drowning in student debt, were incredibly supportive. My supervisor pulled me aside to tell me she was proud of me for standing up for myself. The radiologist I work with most often, Dr. Chen, shared her own story of family financial manipulation and assured me I'd made the right choice. The sale closed yesterday. The check was deposited into my account this morning. This afternoon, I paid off all $68,000 of my student loans in one transaction. The feeling of clicking that Pay in Full button was indescribable. 6 years of weight lifted off my shoulders in an instant. Tomorrow, I'm looking at condos in a secure building near the hospital. Nothing fancy, just a one-bedroom with good bones, proper security, and no shared walls with family members who view my success as their personal ATM. My family hasn't spoken to me in 5 days. My parents' neighbors have told me they've been telling everyone in their apartment complex that I'm a lottery winner who refused to share with family. Diego has pivoted his GoFundMe to focus on the trauma of being betrayed by blood. I'm surprisingly okay with the silence. For the first time in my adult life, I don't have to check my bank balance before buying groceries. I don't have to pick up extra holiday shifts to make loan payments. I can actually consider taking a continuing education course to specialize in MRI technology without wondering how I'll afford it. Was going nuclear the right choice? Maybe not. Could I have found a compromise that kept some family relationships intact? Possibly. But what I've learned through this process is that some people will always see your success as their opportunity. My grandmother knew this. That's why she left the property to me alone, with clear instructions about its purpose. I'm honoring her true wishes, using her gift to build a stable, independent future in healthcare, free from manipulation and guilt. That feels more like family loyalty than anything my parents or brother have shown me. Update 2. The aftermath 3 months later. It's been 3 months since I sold the duplex and went no contact with my immediate family. I wanted to provide a final update because the aftermath has been both validating and unexpectedly revealing. First, let me tell you about my current situation. I successfully purchased a one-bedroom condo in a secure building exactly 8 minutes from a hospital. It's nothing luxurious, but it's mine. No mortgage, purchased outright for $295,000. The building has controlled access, security cameras, and most importantly, a front desk that doesn't let in unexpected visitors claiming family emergencies. I kept $300,000 in a diversified investment portfolio for retirement and emergencies, and the remaining funds went toward paying off my car, setting up a proper home office for continuing education, and yes, taking my first real vacation in 5 years, a week in Seattle where I did nothing but sleep, read, and remember what it felt like to not be constantly stressed about money. My work life has improved dramatically. Without the constant financial pressure, I've been able to focus on my professional development. I enrolled in an MRI technology certification program that will increase my earning potential by about $20,000 annually once completed. I also volunteered to join a committee working on improving patient care protocols in our imaging department, something I never had the mental bandwidth for when I was drowning in loan payments. But the real story here is what happened to my family, particularly Diego. About 6 weeks after the sale, I started hearing from mutual acquaintances about the family situation. Diego, apparently convinced that I would eventually cave and share the money, had made some significant life decisions based on that assumption. He'd told people he was about to come into family money and had been making promises and plans accordingly. He'd applied for several high-end apartments, telling landlords he had a trust fund being released soon. He'd also begun reaching out to investors for his latest business idea, a wellness retreat for digital natives, claiming he had substantial personal funding about to become available. When none of this materialized, his house of cards collapsed spectacularly. The apartment applications were rejected, and one landlord threatened legal action for fraudulent application after discovering Diego had photoshopped bank statements. The investors he'd approached spread word in the local startup community that he was unreliable and potentially deceptive. His GoFundMe was shut down after multiple people reported it as fraudulent when they learned the real story. As of now, Diego remains in my parents' basement. But here's where it gets interesting. My parents' living situation has become complicated. Their landlord, who owns several properties in their complex, heard through the neighborhood grapevine about their harassment of me at my workplace and their attempts to legally steal my inheritance. He chose not to renew their lease, citing concerns about tenants who demonstrate aggressive behavior toward family members and create hostile environments. They found another apartment, but it's smaller, more expensive, and farther from both their jobs. The added commute costs and increased rent have strained their finances significantly, especially since they're still supporting Diego entirely. The professional consequences for my parents were unexpected but severe. My mother's co-workers at the restaurant where she serves learned about the situation. She'd apparently been telling everyone about the fortune I'd stolen from the family. When they learned the truth, that she'd been trying to force me to give away my legitimate inheritance to my unemployed brother while I was struggling with student debt, the atmosphere at her workplace became frigid. Several of her longtime regulars, including a group of retired teachers who met there weekly, began requesting different servers. Her tip income dropped by nearly 40%. One of her co-workers, whose daughter is a nurse, was particularly vocal about her disgust with my mother's treatment of me. "You should be proud of your son for working in healthcare, not punishing him for being successful," she apparently said during a particularly tense shift meeting. My father faced similar backlash at his kitchen job. His boss, whose son is a respiratory therapist, told him directly that any parent who doesn't support their child's medical career doesn't deserve that child support in return. His co-workers, many of whom have children struggling with student loans, began excluding him from their usual social gatherings. The extended family drama has also shifted. My Aunt Rosa's daughter, my cousin Elena, is currently in nursing school. After seeing how my parents treated me, Elena reached out to apologize for her mother's behavior and to ask for advice about managing student loans. We've actually developed a good relationship. I'm helping her understand different repayment strategies, and she's keeping me updated on the family situation. Through Elena, I learned that family opinion has largely turned against my parents and Diego. My grandmother's siblings, who initially stayed quiet, have begun speaking up about how appalled Grandma Elena would be at my parents' behavior. One great-aunt revealed that my grandmother had actually considered leaving the property in a trust that would have prevented any sale for 10 years, but decided against it because she wanted me to have full control over my future. Diego's current status is perhaps the most telling. He's now 26, still unemployed, and increasingly isolated. His gaming friends have distanced themselves after he repeatedly asked them for money. His social media presence, once his primary focus, has dwindled to bitter posts about capitalist society and family betrayal that receive fewer and fewer engagement responses. Last week, he applied for a job at a local grocery store, the same type of position he'd deemed beneath him for years. He wasn't hired. The manager, who knows my family situation through community connections, told him they were looking for candidates with proven reliability and work ethic. My mother recently tried to reconnect, sending me a letter through my workplace since I'd blocked all electronic communication. In it, she blamed me for ruining Diego's future and claimed that if I'd just given him the duplex, he would have become successful. She conveniently ignored that Diego had every opportunity one had and more: no student debt, free housing, parental support, and still chose to do nothing with those advantages. I returned the letter unopened with a note through the hospital's legal department stating that any further workplace contact would be considered harassment and dealt with accordingly. The most vindicating moment came last month when I ran into my high school guidance counselor at a medical conference where I was presenting a poster about radiation safety protocols. She told me she'd heard about my family situation and wanted me to know she was proud of how I'd handled it. She also revealed something I'd never known. My parents had actually tried to convince her not to encourage my healthcare career aspirations, claiming it would give me ideas above my station. As I write this final update, I'm sitting in my own condo, looking at my framed degree and certification on the wall. Items I couldn't properly display when I was living in that cramped studio. My student loan accounts show zero balances. My investment portfolio is growing. I'm scheduled to complete my MRI certification in 6 months, which will come with a substantial raise. But more than the financial freedom, I've gained something invaluable. The knowledge that I can stand up for myself, that my worth isn't determined by how much I sacrifice for people who don't value my achievements, and that sometimes the best family is the one you choose, not the one you're born into. My work family has become my real support system. Next week, I'm hosting a dinner for my fellow techs who are still struggling with loans, sharing what I've learned about financial planning and career advancement. Dr. Chen has offered to mentor me as I consider eventually pursuing a bachelor's degree to move into radiologic sciences education. Diego, meanwhile, remains in that basement, now entering his 8th year of finding himself. My parents continue to enable him while their own financial situation deteriorates. They're learning, too late, that when you put all your eggs in one basket, especially a basket that has never held anything successfully, you risk losing everything. The duplex that started all of this is now part of a mixed-use development. They're building modern apartments with ground-floor retail spaces. Sometimes I drive by and think about my grandmother, about how she worked her entire life to buy that property, to build something lasting. I don't think she'd be upset that I sold it. I think she'd be proud that I used her gift to build something even better, a life free from manipulation, guilt, and the exhausting cycle of being the only responsible adult in a family that confused exploitation with love. To anyone facing similar family pressure about money, inheritance, or success, remember that family isn't a license to steal from your future. Real family supports your growth, celebrates your achievements, and respects your autonomy. Anyone who tries to guilt you into sacrificing your stability for their comfort isn't acting like family, they're acting like parasites. My grandmother knew the difference. Now, finally, so do I. Thank you all for your support through this journey. I'm closing this chapter of my life and moving forward, debt-free, guilt-free, and surrounded by people who value what I contribute to the world, not what they can extract from me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply living well, succeeding despite the obstacles, and refusing to let anyone dim your light to make their darkness more comfortable. Final reflection. As I prepare to close this account and move on with my life, I wanted to share one last thought. Last week, I received a message from a young radiologic technology student who had been following my story. She's facing similar pressure from her family to abandon her studies and help support her siblings instead. She told me my story gave her the courage to continue her education despite the guilt. That message meant more to me than the entire $820,000 inheritance. We often talk about legacy in terms of money or property, but real legacy is the impact we have on others' lives. My grandmother's true gift wasn't the duplex. It was showing me that someone believed I deserved more than what my family had planned for me. Now I get to pass that gift forward, whether it's through mentoring fellow healthcare workers, providing quality patient care, or simply showing others that it's okay to choose yourself sometimes. The duplex is gone, but what it built, my freedom, my career, my self-respect, will last a lifetime. And unlike a building that can be fought over, guilt-tripped away, or stolen by manipulation, these things are mine alone. No one can take away what you've earned through your own hard work and sacrifice. They can try to claim it, guilt you about it, or demand shares of it, but at the end of the day, your achievements belong to you. My name is Marcus. I'm a radiologic technologist. I'm debt-free. I'm family-free. And for the first time in my life, I'm genuinely happy. That's worth more than any inheritance.